would be that? Is that Gordon?
Yeah.
Hi, Gordon. Ogres.
Ye howdy.
Texas mama.
Yeah.
It's my Texas mama.
Mama.
Who just spoke to my mama.
I think you've lost control, Kurt.
Lost control?
Yeah.
Of this
Okay.
group.
First one for me, so pardon if there are any issues. I'll keep persevering until we get it right.
But you're letting the villagers burn down the castle.
But okay. Let's start with the meeting. Okay, Michael C. Keith, you'll be the first reader tonight. Michael C. Keith is the author and co-author of more than 24 groundbreaking books on electronic media, being a former professor at Boston College. He's now a professor emeritus in communication. He's been the author of an acclaimed memoir, The Next Better Place, a young adult novel, also called Life is Falling Sideways, and 24 story collections. His latest includes Bodies Recline and Euphony. He was nominated for various awards, Penn Faulkner, multiple times for the Pushcart, a Penn O'Henry Award, and was a finalist of the National Indie Book Excellence Award for short fiction anthology. And he's also been a finalist at the International Book Award for Fiction Visionary category. His work has been translated to many languages, including Greek, Russian, Albanian, Spanish, Indonesian, German, and Chinese. And that is what we have of what I have of Michael on our website. So I'm reading that verbatim with a little bit of annotation. And I hope that's enough to launch Michael on his reading.
Thank you, Kurt. It's a pleasure to be here, and you rattled off the number of languages my books have been published in. So I thought maybe I'd do this in Lebanese tonight, if that's okay with you.
I'm perfectly fine Lebanese.
You probably understand it. Anyway, I'll be reading a batch of pieces from my book published by Pierian Press, Pings, and I thought I'd give you a little explanation of what the term pings means. It's pieces which combine the elements of poetry and prose, hybrided, while some may lean more toward verse, others may lean more toward narrative fiction. What they share in common is brevity. The works aim to convey an evocative thought in a succinct way, a statement that jolts awareness with its alacrity, profundity, and poignancy. A ping succeeds when it achieves abundance of meaning in compression. So that's as close as I've come to a term that I conjured a few years ago. So without further ado, let me start reading some of the pieces in Pings. The first piece is called Naked Brunch, derivative, yes. William Lee had as many eggs at Original Henry's as his hollow belly would allow. He then went into the alley next to the restaurant and shot his pistol at the crumbled fedora on a vagrant's head. Bullseye, he bleated joyously as the man slumped to the ground. Who do you think that was? This is called Hungry for Love. Sarah knew it was the only time she'd have dinner with the man sitting across from her when he said, "You enjoy your food, don't you?" This piece is called Sophia's Choice. She had children who caught fire when they had too much sugar. She fell for a man who did not want to become involved with a woman who had children. So she took her son and daughter to the nearby bakery. This is called I think this is the one I'm reading. Himself. How could it be his daughter won swim meets when he himself couldn't swim? A dumb question to ask himself, he supposed. As dumb as asking himself, how could it be his son shot someone when he himself never shot someone? This is called euphemism. Danny was confused by the explanation his mother gave him when his old sister remained in bed and couldn't go to school. She has her friend, she'd say, and he'd peek into his sibling's room and find no one with her. This is called pressed into action. Kyle's book was short, so his publisher added a dozen blank pages at the end to make it look more substantial to potential buyers. When the book did not sell well, the publisher eliminated the pages with print and sold the volume as a notepad. Reviews were strong and sales were brisk. This is called Friends with No Benefits. I checked out his wheelhouse when he wasn't there. It surprised me how empty it was. Barren, you might say. He was so secretive about his wheelhouse, I thought something of real value must be there. You know how disappointing it was when you discover someone you thought had a lot in his wheelhouse really has nothing there? This is called The Kites of Delhi. Umar contends it is part of Vishnu's plan. The raptors eat the human pestilence in our cities to reduce the number of dead. They are a sacred gift, he says, arms outstretched to the soiled sky. This is called Baltimore July Tenement. The heat is oppressive. That's what they say when you drip wet and can't breathe, right? The mattress under me gives off steam, and I lash about trying to locate any movement of air. Then my wife comes and plops down next to me, and the door to hell opens in earnest. This is called A Hole in His World. He's only known one person named Emil in his entire life. He wonders how much better his life would have been had he known two. This is called Mushroom Water. I was hesitant to drink from the rusty goblet until I was told the liquid in it contained a fungus of a healing nature. It was after a few swallows my life turned around. The open sores on my body began to heal, and the cries from the gallows became song. This is called Scorpion in His Coffee. As the sun crept above the date grove outside of Marrakesh, Bertrand lifted the cup to his lips and was taken by the beauty of the desert. This is called Fear of Fall. The leaves are falling, and soon the abandoned property next door will be exposed, and we will see their ghosts again. This is called Fish Eyes. She wondered if it was perverse to feel sexually aroused when her pet stared at her as she lay naked on her bed. A little weird, maybe, but so what, she told herself, thinking she might even get a second goldfish. This is called Beat. Dig it. There's Kerouac tapping out his jazz while Ginsberg howls for love in the next room, and Cassidy dances his chemical rumba on the sidewalk. Here comes Burroughs sniffing out a morphine lunch, and Corso with his Vestal lady scatting for Ferlinghetti in the City of Lights. Yeah, man. This is called Who Would Do That? While we traveled as far as the dirt road would take us and found no bed, bath, and beyond, we realized we'd been given the wrong directions out of spite. This is called Maybe You Want to Be Gone. We all sat around your bed hoping for the best. The doctors were not optimistic you'd make it. We prayed for your return to the conscious world and shed tears fearing you would not. Then, just before your final breath, your expression changed and we realized we were aggravating you. This is called Sacrificing for Art. After I fight with my wife, I can write, but I don't like fighting with my wife. I do like to write, though, and sometimes it's hard to write if I don't fight with my wife. So I fight with my wife so I can write. This is called The Curse of Cognizance. Garrett noticed he'd put his dirty boxers into the trash basket rather than the hamper, and it troubled him. At his annual physical that afternoon, he told his doctor about it and was assured that the very fact he was aware of his mistake was a solid indication he was not experiencing early stage dementia. Later, Google indicated otherwise. This is called Sitting Doves. The country was there for the taking. It possessed considerable natural resources and a kind and peaceful people. The Kremlin armed itself for bloody battle, the kind it liked best. And this I'll finish with. It's called Persistent Muse. In writing the story about the story he couldn't write, he'd written the story. Thank you.
That was very, very, very nice, Michael. Thank you. Thank you for that reading. I think your involutions, convolutions are wonderful and insightful, as you say. And I think that's it's not, yeah, it's interesting in that way. It's reminds me of something between haiku and aphorisms. So, aphoristic, and they're very, very nice. Thank you very much. They're really excellent.
Thank you, Kurt.
And I know you're doing a lot of writing and a lot of publishing, so you're quite busy with all that. And I'm happy to hear that you got to be on our press. Really, thank you for being here, and being one of our authors. We really enjoy that. So,
And thank you for publishing Pigs.
oh yeah, it was a pleasure. Um, and I thank you for being here tonight, everyone. There is an open mic after this. Anyone wants to read, I really encourage them to come on and read something, a piece. It could be flash fiction, it could be a poem, whatever you have in mind. I'd love to hear it. We all love to hear it. I'm going to next introduce our next reader, Krysia Jopek. Are you there, Krysia?
It looks like she dropped out.
Wow. Let me see here.
I scared her away.
I think it's not you. Oh, there we go. I'm admitting her again. And maybe her connectivity, on this where she's at. Maybe something wrong with her. She's coming back right now. And
All right. I somehow got into safe driving mode.
we figured as much. I'm going to introduce you, Krysia.
Thank you. Sorry.
No worries at all. No worries. No pressure. No worries here at all. Krysia Jopek was born in Hartford, Connecticut. She holds 4 degrees, BA, MA in English from the University of Connecticut, a master in philosophy in English from the City University of New York, and Graduate Center. And she holds an MFA in literary fiction from Albertus Magnus. Her first novel, Maps and Shadows, by Krysia Jopek, I guess in 2010, won the 2011 Silver Benjamin Franklin Award in historical fiction. Her chapbook Hourglass was nominated in 2018 Pushcart Prize. Her poems appeared in Blaze Vox, Wallace Stevens Journal, Redactions, Split Rock Review, Great American Literary Magazine, Gone Law 19, it's Columbia Poetry Review, and Prairie Schooner. She is the founder of her own magazine called Diaphanous Micro, an e-journal of literary and visual art, which is fantastic, by the way. Her first full book of poetry, Dirge, A Ballet for 13 Dancers. It's a long sequence. I call it a fragment hymn poem, but in 13 acts, but it's really something that's much more than that. And I want to make a special mention with Krysia's work here by showing you a screenshot, if I may share a screen here, and you'll see what we did with her table of contents. This is intended to be, let me try to turn screen sharing on. Hold on a second, everyone. When we do that, can anyone see the screen?
Yeah.
No?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. It's beautiful.
What we did here was this is the cover design we came up with originally.
I said,
But this is the table of contents over here.
It's the program.
It's done as a program for a ballet program. So we had an opportunity to do some very unusual typesetting and design work on this book. When you have the physical book, you open up, you actually see the program rather than the contents. In the first movement in G minor, second movement F major, and etc. With the interlude, intermissions, coda. It's very, very interesting the way we did that. I thought you might all like seeing that.
Thank you.
yeah.
And Krysia, I think I'll let you go back to Krysia at that stage. And Krysia, are you ready?
Yeah. So Kurt, thank you for a beautiful book. And it was supposed to come out in December of 2022, ideally for Christmas. And then I ended up in the hospital and 3 surgeries later. And then I have to thank my third 2 angels who, I mean, luckily it didn't come out at that time because it just took on a life of its own, I have to say, and it wouldn't be this book without Kurt's beautiful design, the physical book, and then the text. Mike Cole, who wrote an essay at the back, was like the executive editor, his time cheerleading. Same with Miguel Escobar, who did a beautiful recording of the whole book on Bandcamp. If you Google Dirge Ballet for 13 Dancers, maybe add my name, not sure. Bandcamp comes up pretty quickly. The prelude is free, and then there's the first movement is $7, and the second movement is $7. And his reading really helped me. He did a reading for the first version of the book, and I just kept listening to it to get rid of any repetition of words that I did not want. So they're integral, critical for this book. And yeah, it's written to be performed. And when the paperback comes out, I know some places to send it, especially the university. UHeart, I thought I saw something that really inspired this role model. Very contemporary dancers, nude leotards, minimal set, backdrop of visuals, videography. The choreography was amazing. And both Miguel and Escobar and Mike Cole said, Miguel recorded it because he had to start reading it out loud to hear the different voices, the dancers. And the essay is about how ideally, get together with your friends and read Dirge. Okay, so there are 13 dancers. Elliot's a dancer. These are the 13 dancers: August, Bunny, Canto, Fresno, Haiti, Hayden, Hazel, Moonbeam, Orpheus, Plato, Stearns, my T.S. Eliot, Temple, and Wolf. Prelude with cellos, one dancer, Hazel. I slept in the Book of the Dead and woke with parchment scrolls, blooming tired magnolias from my unhinged mouth. Lugubrious cellos attempted to climb me back to the mud-encrusted stone floor, but I panicked. When my thinking can trace some semblance of surface, I might explain. Some will pigeonhole me verbose. If I erase, the dreams of the dead multiply. First movement in G minor. Act 1, the green room, 13 dancers. When the dreams were cremated on Saturday, they left white ash in our hair. The ghost hid the small deaths, watching us. It was odd, the leave taking, micro swimming the rain, shaking fallen coats, making room for room. August couldn't abandon incongruity with any knock on the front door kind of wisdom. We were one and another then, floating paintings, pretending we weren't too tired to want anything. If the operation had been successful, the stranger's kidney would become family. Disease, can gnaw lungs. The afterworld might be a softened spectacle, a liquid palate that proliferates. Imperatives might prove useful, even if discarded much later with shattered birdhouses. You should alert the neighbors about the accident. Ignore the hyacinths that didn't bloom, the gardenias devoid of petal scent, the gardeners at the back of the stage sobbing in empty watering cans. When you drink the sea, too tired to tread the surface, the gods instruct. Float with your torso, recite the alphabet in reverse, create a new classification system for your memories. A composition can cause disarray. The maestro's hands have been bartered for falcon wings. Someone threw out the metronome. G minor is the saddest key, but there's no translation for your feelings. Our most accomplished choreographers can expose the rubble of the poorest countries, the collapse of currencies that can no longer purchase the sea's reflection. Shh. You mustn't say anything about the Victorian Gothic sci-fi set. The sculptor went a little crazy. You should note the 4 emergency exits in the event of an active shooter. Those in the cheaper seats may be asked for donations of blood. 13 characters are busy exchanging personalities in the dressing room. The writers are rearranging pages. Note, all of your seats recline. The mosaic tiles on the floor contain mirrors. Debilitated fisherwomen, teal sea glass in their throats, count days of impossible catch. Sponge salt from decaying lips, sing in fractured 16th notes. Palimpsesting hymns. Please don't talk about the narrative fray until the final cymbal crash. Canto, the catbird, perched in the high-pitched eaves, calculates your every move. His marble eyes, those of a miniature goat or wolf, have locked the stranger's eyes in the front row, gray by default. Don't be alarmed. Ensconced, the ambulances tread 911. Call a priest who can't answer. Wake the sleep-laden soothsayer. Notify your person. The Wi-Fi reception might be shoddy, given the lightning and hail. 3 philosophers are playing with Play-Doh in an absurd sandbox, but we're not naming names. It's good for you to spend quality time in dirt. Meaning, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Syllogisms might concave. The dancers should get ready in the green room for this dirge. For the spinning firefly disco lights go. We're pitching sky. The sun is spinning hieroglyphics. It's time to climb up from your abyss with a brand new wish list. Throw rice at the submerged iPhone at the bottom of a stolen car ditched in the dirty river. Roll down the windows for shallow air. Prepare white funerary cloths in the event of a bleeding out after extrication. Are you ready? We're one series of equations away from a possible vacation, maybe a catharsis, let's say. The chorus is looking subtle, but regal, drawing cards from a magical deck. Note, it's imperative to jettison this book based on good behavior. You've been very patient, you with your pockets inside out. Act 3. Empty temples. 12 dancers. Night pulled new hostages down for the dream world, a dozen at a time. Stones are heavy before they become blackbirds. Some gods are too hungry to pluck another's hunger, their black eyes collecting painful souvenirs. Ideas became objects that overfilled the house. The house mocked the ideas the objects lost. Desire's sequence of footsteps cluttered Monday's cartography. Someone's OCD kicked in at 3:17 a.m. You were neurotically restaging events in your living room, unable to peel layers down. Shadow boxes, random words in exotic calligraphy, strange phrases, obsolete instruments of travel, photos of ancient ruins, empty temples, doors that didn't go anywhere. In the desert, the mirage was a sign of confusion, normalized by the gathering sandstorm. A bevy of lutes, wooden flutes, and techno violins braided a red noon estuary. I babysat your sadness last night and left before you woke, handing off the baton to the restless ghosts of your house that find you charming. When I fell prostrate at the temple floor, I lost myself in empty spaces until I pulled my entire city of birds down to show you how the poem celebrates its staccato chords, realizing too late that this had become too cerebral. In the book you're writing, someone continues sending unfinished stories. In the book you're writing, someone continues sending unfinished stories that follow like a dream that keeps beginning, even though you keep waking. In the diaries of the somnambulist, every dream is a new city, a magic room in a house that extrapolates us. City of imperfect circles, city of why, city where I invented you. In a lost city, gamelons play a dirge for the princess who stopped eating, disappeared. Chance deals a joker under Plato's ideal table that isn't the king's jester. You should make sure she doesn't carry weapons. The borders, as usual, are questionable. Everyone was trying to get out of town, see themselves from somewhere else, less unsettling. It's okay to be lost on one-way streets, working in the dark, one of us said, filling out paperwork with your name so you can belong. Once we cauterize the bleeding, you'll be wiser. Once on the highest floor of the skyscraper, your image shall multiply. You now live on Choice Street in the city of renewal in a state called mild chaos and work for the Department of Speculation. I know you're wondering about all this. Once you come to terms with terms you created haphazardly. Inhabitants of an ancient city gather at the elastic perimeter to hold the world in place. They take turns on a deadly pilgrimage to the center, to trampoline back to gods and goddesses, they think. The ones who don't return by curfew are burned in the sun. Performance can take wrong turns. After I became an envelope for myself, the subject said, I cut out my heart with a kitchen knife because it no longer served me. Sheathed it in the music box, the wind broke, with the miniature ballerina splayed. I set the clock back against the salt pond's shimmering mirrors to another twilight when someone held me against starlight. Nothing is forever except forever. It's the proper time to sit the ghost down and tell them everything. They're afraid for you. I didn't mean to run the car in the garage. It became difficult to find things worth finding. I didn't mean to pretend to be incredulous, dubious, misguided, dangerous, make the locals stare, shift solace away from itself. One of us proffered a book on a silver tray of watery moonlight, a book inside a book, inside a house of being, quiet, quelled, no longer a quotient. We should confess to an imperfection's diligence, chart ingrained woes in chalk against obscurity. Murals in Brazil's favelas rush downhill in the rainy season, leave visual echoes. I found the missing encryption to unlock the afternoon, but then I misplaced it again. Now we're between chapters, the divisions on vinyl between songs. Now the sky tells a story of sky until we forget what the sky has told us. The characters in the ensemble have jumped off the stage, abandoning store-bought salvation. A line of questionable propriety is always personal. I don't feel like capitalism anymore, one of us said. No one will understand all the gaps between Y and Z, the ending. A circular mouth on syllables, resurrecting sound. The ghosts drown out our words, jealous we can speak them. Electric cellos in empty temples turn Bach into a madman for an hour or two. The chorus choreographs us. Dismantle the clocks and breathe. At the altar, on landmines. The body never sleeps in the same room. Verbs in the story fall out. Being equals an event. The film Unconsciousness defines it. The text I'm writing disappears. This is the last act I'll read. The shorter one. This is from the second movement of two. Second movement in F major. Act 7. Vivifications, 8 dancers. Nothing actually begins the way you have it. Just the ice cracking over old women who want to get out. Tell them the rescue crew exploded. Tell them anything that doesn't burn your mouth. Someone once loved me. Someone else pulled the trigger. Someone climbed the stone escalators in my chest. A new beloved arrived without umbrage. The beloved untangled the river from sun. Roads widened rib bones. All my memories became radioactive. It's excessive to take up room. Time is an untrustworthy character, reveling in truancy. Every language says, hello. This is how to say, I'm frightened. This is how to indicate distrust. Detailed observations may prove helpful. Some labyrinths hide dangerous spiraling. Some thresholds cause unnecessary agitation. Tell the mathematicians there is more than one null set. That I was a series, not a segment. Here are my worn out consecrations, vestiges of divination. They say the anesthesia will wear off. Your amnesia may not be a bad wrench. We'll find you a better real estate broker. You don't have to look so stupefied. No one matriculated the spin-out violent scrimmage. The Let's Get Back Together tour with viable obliviousness. Could everyone keep up? Let's be practical. Let's consult the playbook. A mountain breaks the camel. A camel becomes sounds. Now the desert seeks new shadows. Now the shadow takes drinks into town. The open-mouthed white lily calls cloud. From tar roofs, morning doves, iridescent feathers gleam the sun. The other birds become sky confetti that dreams of other birds. In most narrations, gods are lost. In most letters home, the war might end. In the violet close-up spotlight, the passed-out subject, exhausted from the interlude, will be rescued from parenthesis. Her dreaming fingers stopped weaving. Skins are left for new takers. The chorus chants holy texts in Sanskrit. Someone should let the prisoners out. Someone should sit down with the mother of the sociopath. Someone should focus. Someone should be kind. Slowly, we fall through Celtic knots, high-pitched animal sounds after the trap closes. I promise to pull you from the building first. Bandage your wounds at the last checkpoint where we never met. Every language says farewell. Tell them we were happy, that I flew when they said I should be swimming. I miss my breath, but not skepticism. We did meet before, but you won't recognize. Not all kisses carry deferral. We have become the sea where the captain drowned, where his wife waits with a lantern. Anxiety abuts some mystical occasions. No one told the phoenix, this is fire. Daedalus, I'm sorry. Gilgamesh, you tried. Something has transmogrified. We were shaking our own deaths with streetlight fluidity. Everyone's pain is personal. The Rorschach test won't help you. Let pain be your guide, he said. Night ended like a butterfly. Thank you.
Thank you, Krysia. I wanted to mention one thing about Krysia's work in particular that is kind of striking. When I'm looking for out-of-the-box ways of thinking, or I'm boxed in a little bit, I can grab her book and just open randomly and find a passage right away, any poem of hers that's out of the box. It makes your brain in a different groove, and you're suddenly seeing some words together that haven't been put together before, and kind of a way of thinking about something that's different. Um, I'll have to say Michael Keith does some of that with his disjunctions as well. But Krysia does it also with her disjunctions, and it is disjunctive, and it is very out of the box. It just gets your mind into a different place when you're stuck in a rut trying to write something, and you grab someone's work and you read it, and you get inspired by it to write, and it get you kind of loosen you up. It's like oiling your brain. I find that very useful. So with other poets as well, but just mention that. Thank you, Krysia.
Kurt. Actually, Kurt said, Krysia, every time my head's up my ass, I just start reading your book.
It's true. It is true. And it's also Miguel's reading she was mentioning earlier has music in the background, and he reads it very differently than she does. And so it's interesting how each of us brings our own life to the work we read. And if we were to read anyone's work out loud, each of us would probably read it differently than the other person would read it to some degree. And that's I find it a very interesting phenomena. Someone could read, five people read one poem line, and they take five different things away. And one person likes something, and other one hates it. Someone likes this, they like that. It's very, very interesting how you see people bringing their own lived experience to a piece of poetry or writing of any kind. I find that really fascinating. We have a short open mic here. Anyone still willing to want to read something is welcome to. I'm going to start with John Wessex. We have Amy Gordon.
Hi. So anyway, there's a term in philosophy called category mistake, and that what Krysia does reminds me very much of she's playing around with that. Anyway, I'd like to embarrass her. Here's a poem from my Writer's Things series, and it's called Krysia Jopek's Dog, Elliot. Escape the pound! There will be no fascist salutes or mental asylums for him, but it's hard to keep your trousers rolled when you have four legs. Three-legged dogs get along fine. I've even seen dogs with two rear wheels looking like they belong in the chariot race in Ben-Hur. Of course, none of this applies to Eliot or ever will. If William Wyler had cast a beagle instead of Charlton Heston, Wyler would include a feast of Alfred Lord Venison under an ensign St. Vincent Molay, along with a canine poetry reading. Malamutes would hog the mic, howling introductions longer than their poems and going on past their time limits. After Eliot read his epic, a corgi named Carlos would growl, "He set poetry back 50 years."
That's a good one, John. You're always fun, sir. Next, I want to invite Amy to read something, and let's see what she's got.
Okay, thank you. This is a piece of flash fiction. It's called To the Moon, Alice. Alice's hand shook as she dialed the travel agent's number. While she had spent many years thinking about it, it only took minutes to book a one-way ticket to the moon and a reservation at the Starlight Inn, an all-inclusive resort for people wanting to get away. All she had left to do was pack her bag. She and Ralph had lived in the tiny two-room apartment they'd rented when they first got married. In the early days, they used to joke about how they could hold hands, regardless of where they were standing. He was a big man and his presence was everywhere. But they had never moved, and those same two rooms seemed to shrink a bit more with each passing year. She wasn't sure when it had started, but she remembered the chill in the tone he used when he complained she was smothering him. She was smothering him? The irony of it almost made her laugh. Almost. After that, whenever he talked about needing his space, he'd put on his hat and head to Kelsey's bar, the bar down the street. It would be late when he came home, hyped up on whiskey, charge into their bedroom and rant about how he'd buy her a palace once the latest of his string of failed business ventures took off. The next day, he'd wake up with a mouthful of regret. The first time his fist forced the air from her lungs and made her double over in pain, he seemed surprised. "It'll never happen again, I promise," he said. She was sure he meant what he said, but the rhythm of their tides had changed, and everything now felt off kilter. It happened again when he drank too much, when Lucky Lucy didn't win at the track, when his dinner wasn't piping hot, or whenever he thought Alice wasn't appreciative enough. Each time she'd mourn the loss of the man she had fallen in love with. She tried everything she could to please him, but at times, even her breathing seemed to annoy him. Ralph took care to hide the stains of his rage and warned her that if she told anyone or tried to leave, she'd be sorry. She carried his threats with her wherever she went. His words overshadowed the time a coworker tried to extend her friendship, or then again when one of her neighbors stopped her on the street to engage in polite conversation. One morning, the way he glared at her, his eyes moving over her with a fury she'd never seen before, made her realize there was no love left in them. It was as if he was plotting to rip the soul right out of her. If she didn't do something soon, she'd become one of those women she'd read about, beautiful women who seem happy until you looked into their vacant eyes, women whose husbands would rather kill them than let them go. Alice gathered her travel documents, packed her bag, and scribbled a parting note. Her hands shook as she removed her wedding ring. It clattered as it hit the floor before rolling under the radiator. She bent down and swept her hand back and forth as she searched for the gold band. Once she had a firm grasp on it, she set it next to the note as an act of defiance, severing her ties to the ruins of their marriage. Ralph couldn't come after her now, although he'd want to, when he found out that she'd spent their life savings on the trip he'd always promised her.
Thank you, Amy, for reading. And next we have Gordon.
Unmute. Can you hear me now? Good, good. I'm going to read two different little poems. The first one is titled The Midway, and that's kind of appropriate here in Dallas right now because the State Fair of Texas is ongoing. And it's always fun to see what kind of weird fried foods they come up with. This is called The Midway. I tried to pay a robin for singing, an obligator to performing for us on subsequent occasions, snacks provided, including birdseed, the best birdseed. The sunset sends strange, radiant bills too, and none of my accountants know how to pay them. But come on now, you're too good for this. Vulgar speculating, market daylight, neon bar room, night flight, and showers of knowledge, strategization, mixed drinks and feels, but most of my fears are invisible, and that's good enough for now. And then the second one, I titled E. E. Cummings Goes Hollywood. That would be fun. The way they crucify the air and how they nail thee until it only it exists, or sea laps, runnels of yellowish rain, and you like a skin flick lose confusion. It falls out, and Hong Kong now is breathing. Sweaty smiles of lipstick, mouth of smeary, slick leather wishfulness. You barracuda, you. Muddy alleys refrigerate emptiness and be and to be saved for when they science fiction a fearful gesture of personal considerations. And that's it from Dallas.
All right, looking here, next we have Robert O'Sullivan. Robert, are you there?
Yes, I am. Hey, hi, everybody.
Hello, Robert.
Hi. I know Krysia just from Facebook. We've never met, but I'm a pretty big fan. She wrote a poem which I filed in my surrealism category called Even With Its Shuttered Eyes Agape. And that's the one that turned me on to this woman's poems. I was real excited to join tonight and finally get to kind of meet her, virtually at least. I created a character for an anthology we did here in San Diego, where this character I was assigned 3 poems or 3 pages in the book, and this recurring character shows up. So each time in the readings that I would get up, the audience was already prepped because they knew that this guy was going to come back. And I called him Stoner Boomer. So this is just the 3rd time that he shows up in the book. It's called Way Outer Banks. So if I remember my history books right, my Stoner Boomer friend starts back up, this time on the subject of flight. It all goes back to 2 brothers on an East Coast beach, Wrightsville, I think they called it. And there's no airport around back then. So the one brother named Orville, last name Wright, just like in the town, was into building airplanes, while the other brother, called Frank Lloyd, was into building buildings. Whoa, dude, mind blown. You know how when the same word comes up twice in a row and you didn't even plan it, building buildings? Yeah, language is friggin' cool, am I right? Anyway, what was I saying? Oh yeah, so Orville is all, "You gonna help me with my plan, brother? Maybe you could build this town an airport if we can pull this flight thing off, you know?" And then Frank, wait, wasn't one of the brothers named Wilbur? Where the hell did I get Orville from? That's weird, huh? Thank you. Little comic break there.
Okay, I think people are popping off. That's okay. We're still here, a few of us, and that's good.
Oh, I'm gonna take my video off because Elliot needs to go out, but I'm still listening.
Okay, next we have ZV. ZV, I haven't seen her around. She's on the list, but I don't see her on here. ZV.
Z, he's here.
Yeah.
It's pronounced V.
Okay. Oh, there you are. I'm so sorry.
It's okay. No big
I
deal.
apologize. I didn't.
You and 2.3 million people get it wrong. Anyway, I'm going to read from my book, Secret Behind the Gate, very short flash, but I want to just say one thing, that for 35, 40 years, I was a poet and nothing else. And then I had the good fortune of picking up Tim Gager's Every Day There's Something About Elephants and Michael Keith's Let Us Now Speak of Extinctions. And I said, oh, this flash writing is fabulous. So I started writing flash, and I have a chapbook called Wheels, and this one's about 200 pages. And I have lots more that I have to put into books. If you're listening, Mr. Pierian, Springs Press. So this one is called A Dime's Worth. The way Jack tells it, it is in his first job out of the armed forces back from Vietnam with 2 bullet holes still healing. It is the late 1960s and he is glad to be out of the military because he cannot stand taking orders or having the enemy pump bullets into him. He searches the help wanted pages and lands a job with Carter Omega Advertising and Public Relations. His boss, Herbert, gives him 2 small accounts, which he does so well that Herbert gives him the Odyssey Computers a $100,000 account, from which he makes about 10%, a lot more than the military. Anyway, as Jack tells it, Odyssey wants to increase its advertising and public relations budget to $1 million and invites Carter Omega and 5 other companies to develop the next level strategy and campaign. As Jack tells it, he is paid 15 grand a year and his boss drives a $40,000 car with all the bells and whistles. Herbert tells him to draw up an outstanding strategy campaign. Jack says he does. Herbert doesn't like it, so he creates a new one. They go to the presentation and lose out to Mason, Cork, and Villa. Back at the office, Herbert calls everyone into his office and screams that they are all idiots and should all be fired, and singles out Jack, saying, "Guys like you come a dime a dozen." As Jack tells it, he reaches into his pocket, pulls out a dime, which he flips on Herbert's desk and tells him to go buy a dozen. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for reading that. And I sent you a link to submit to the press in there. All right. Thank you. Look forward to reading your work. Timothy is next going to read something for us. And he is also an upcoming author on our press, a novel we're publishing of his. And I'll let you tell you about that.
I'll do the elevator pitch for it. My novel, The Shadows of the Scene, has to do with the gun issue in the United States. It weaves a narrative of 3 main characters. One is a politician who is liberal but runs on all the conservative points in order to get elected. And the other 2 characters is there's an active shooter and there is a reluctant hero that stops an active shooter that basically thinks he has nothing to live for, and that's why he's stopping an active shooter. But the hook is you don't know which one is going to be the shooter and which one's going to be the reluctant hero until the very last scene. So I'm going to read some flash fiction. You guys want me to go for heartbreaking or quirky? Let's go for heartbreaking. How's that? Cats. There's only a certain way to reach the acceptance of death. Jesse found it was to go out back and feed the feral cats. They never liked him anyway, as they were always hers. It was 11 winters ago, after a 2-day blizzard, when the tiny gray one wormed her way through the tire indentations in their condominium's parking lot. The tracks were a foot deep, and there was Oliver, tail visible over the bank. Martina tried to lure him closer with a can of tuna, but the cat, hungry and with a visible rack of ribs, never got within 20 yards. Martina left the open can near the back stairs, and by the next morning it had been licked clean. She had no idea if Oliver ate it, or a skunk, raccoon, or bear, but the next day another can of tuna was left, and it too was polished off. By spring, Oliver could be found waiting closer to the edge of the woods. He didn't run, but he was visible, waiting for the drop-off as if it were a bag of money left as ransom. Oliver, as it turned out, had a sister, Jessie, named Dusty, with the same colored fur and markings as Oliver. She would just come to eat, perhaps once a week, as Oliver was more consistent and way thinner. "Look at the babes," Martina said, pointing out the 2 of them to her lover. Jessie began buying extra cases of Purina, but Oliver and Dusty would retreat into the woods, bounding away from him as if they were his prey whenever he tried to do as Martina did. Meanwhile, the radius between Martina and the cats was becoming smaller each week. One day, Oliver got within arm's reach while Martina spooning out a can of chicken and gravy, but when she reached out to pet Oliver, the cat ran away spooked. It was close enough for her to notice something about Oliver, discover the need to rename him Olive. The next day, a similar retreating happened, but not as dramatic, until a few more weeks went by and Olive allowed herself to be stroked a few times as she started in on her first few bites of dinner. Dusty soon followed suit on everything Olive did, imitating the pre-meal distance and routines to her caretakers as Olive did, the synchronized rollovers on the blacktop and the same meows at the exact same time made Martina laugh. By repeating Olive's routine, Dusty must have thought it was the secret key to enter her world of being fed. Jesse noticed how social they'd become. And the times Martina had to work later or was out of town, he would wait to see if Oliver or Dusty would get any closer to him during their meal times. They never did. He even built a wooden house for them in the winter, which they used at the coldest times, cuddled together, fur and body heat, keeping themselves warm. Many cold winters and many hot summers saw the two cats becoming more docile and less feral around Martina, even jumping up on the second 10-foot tall windowsill outside the kitchen to meow at her through the glass. Their requests weren't always to be fed, but sometimes just to bring her out of the house for attention. The babes need me, she would say to Jesse, going outside to feed, pet, or sit with them each and every time they wanted anything. It was early summer, the heat introducing itself to the searing months ahead when Martina felt a twinge in her side while bending down to pet Olive. She would continue to feel this for a few weeks, the twinge now a shooting pain when she bent down to feed the cats. She knew it was more than a muscle pull. Then she got the diagnosis. Hers was one of the bad forms, the type which gives you only 6 months to a year. She and Jesse tried to have hope the best they could as they spoke to each other awake at night in bed. During the roughest times during her chemo, at her sickest, she still managed to struggle down the stairs to see the cats and was mad when Jesse fed them if she rested. And then she no longer could be mad. It was time. Living was an impossibility, hard and painful. I have to go, babe, she said weakly, barely able to bend down and stroke their heads. If she were different, she would have collapsed on the hot pavement and wept and cursed with all her might, but instead she just gave them one last pet and lumbered a widespread gate to Jesse's truck so he could drive her to the brightly decorated hospice facility, which had bursting deep purple flowered wallpaper. It was less than a week. On the night she died, Jesse sat on the back stairs overlooking their bowls and opened a can of chicken and gravy and sat. Olive and Dusty were nowhere to be seen. Then he saw a movement. It was Olive. He called out to her, but Olive planted herself at the edge of the parking lot about 50 feet away, crouching forward, front paws pointing out. Jesse waited for her to come to him, but she wouldn't move. Finally, he gave up and walked over to her blue bowl, dumping the can of food into it, and headed up the stairs.
Thank you, Timothy, for reading that. I want to share, you might indulge me all for a second. Since we had open reading, I want to just read a brief piece that I got accepted in an anthology in Australia. So no one in these states will ever see this poem. It'll never happen. It's Australia. I love the Australian authors I have, and they have gotten me involved with things over there. And it's seen in England, but not in the U.S. much. Anyway, the anthology is called Ricochet. So it's about ricochets. So I wrote a poem, a very short poem called Ricochet. How simple. Ricochet. In the literature of human violence, hundreds of years from now, will there still be occasion to reference the soft splatter of a child, as is now our daily referendum in America, to type up the wet red details of a quick bullet's trajectory out from an easily obtained barrel into the round, bright eyes of a small face? Yeats would have been among the children, visiting them at school today. He'd have been found, his great man's body wrapped around a few smaller hands and feet dangling out. He'd not have had to think on it. A wild swan, frantic, the wings of its arms spread wide apart, draping its babies from the echoing plunder. Thanks for letting me share that. And I think that brings our meeting to conclusion. Our first one. I appreciate all of your help and your patience, especially tonight. First time we've done this, so look forward to having more readings in the future with our authors, and doing some one-on-one readings as well, and interviews and so forth. We're going to be doing a lot more social media this year. So thank you very much for all of you being here tonight, and I really appreciate you all being here. Thank you very much. Have a great evening and a great week. Okay?
Thank you for doing this reading.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you
Great.
so much, Kurt.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Actually, I put my email in the chat. I forgot to tell you why. I run a series called the Virtual Thursdays Dire Literary Series with a feature and an open mic. And it's tomorrow night, and it's Kristen Bach. So if you're interested, stopping by at 7 p.m.
Timothy's series is one of the best series out there, period. It's excellent.
Thank you for doing this, Kurt.
Um,
Yes.